Back with you tonight on In Focus. A drought is looming over the Eastern Cape province, an unfortunate result of a lack of planning. Now, communities of the Eastern Cape find themselves in a daily struggle to access water. Alleged years of bad planning, failure to spend drought grants, and putting infrastructure projects on hold has led to this water crisis. Here to talk to us about this, I'm joined now by the Provincial Head of the Department of Water and Sanitation in the Eastern Cape, Portia Makhanya. Good to have you with us today, HOD. It's years really of neglect, but also multi-year of drought that has brought us to this particular point. Paint the effects of what has been experienced there in the Eastern Cape over a couple of years, as far as water is concerned. All right, HOD, hope you can hear me there. I'm saying it's an effect of multi-years of neglect, but multi-years of drought as well in the province. Paint a picture for us of the effect that this has had on the water supply in critical areas in the province.
Thank you and good evening to your listeners. The Eastern Cape, as we know, is one of those rural provinces and that is home to the former homelands, the former Transkei and the former Ciskei, which is marked by a lot of unequal distribution of resources, especially basic services. So whilst we indeed are hit by a drought, a severe drought, which had its grip in the province since 2015, we are competing against the impacts of drought and trying to catch up with the inequalities that has been inherited by the province since the previous regime. And we know that in our province, there is still a number of people, more than 350,000 households, who still do not have access to basic infrastructure in terms of tapped water, as well as formal sanitation services. As much as we have made strides, because since 1994, there were below 50% that had access to these. And to date, just around 80% has been covered. So depending on the funding trends that are still yet to come, we will be able to reach 100% of our population. However, that, coupled with drought, has been the major issue. And some of the infrastructure that is already been put in place is, some of it has already reached its useful life, and the drought in itself is also impacting of the sources where water is sourced from for that infrastructure. So there's a multiple of issues that this province has to deal with. And over and above is the issues of vandalism and people that have actually graduated from those standpipes that are located in streets and ready for yard connections and are already connecting themselves and competing with the demands of accessing water to the broader population. However, there is a master plan that the Eastern Cape has crafted, and to eradicate the backlog, 101 billion would be required, and against an annual allocation of 3.5 billion. You can see that we really are competing with other competing needs of government. The master plan is in place, and many projects are actually emanating from those master plans. And as I've said, that as much as we are catching up with the backlogs, there's a recurring backlog where we're having some dysfunctional infrastructure.
Let's go maybe zoom in a little bit. For example, in Elliot, right, where dam levels are low. In fact, they were reported in some instances low as 16%. They're quite probably even lower now. Is it true there that you've now allowed the residents to use livestock water, which in a sense is also quite poisonous because donkeys do their business there and all sorts of things? This is what communities have had to revert to.
It's in many cases, especially around Elliot, we not only dealing with the decreased resources or the decreased dam levels, that's an area that, as I have mentioned, is still having a large part of the population not even having access, like many other parts and pockets within the province. As I've said, the former homelands, where it is not that they are resorting to go, compete with animals. They just don't have access yet to the formal infrastructure because of what I've mentioned before. And that is the backlog that I am referring to.
But are you communicating with them? Because their concern is mismanagement of resources, money that's supposed to go to those projects, but also misinformation is what they are concerned about coming from government, that there's no truth that you're telling them when it comes to this issue of water and what actually you're doing as infrastructure being put in place.
Well, I think that is a common phenomenon where government is actually criticized, whether wrongfully or rightfully. However, around Elliot, there is a Kocha bulk water supply project that the department is implementing with the Amatole district, a project that is already around 90% complete that will service the area around Elliot. So there are a number of major infrastructure interventions that are happening around these areas. But there's also a special grant that the department has set aside and agreed with Treasury that whilst we are rolling out the formal infrastructure, let us look at especially these areas that I'm talking to that are still far from the formal infrastructure, where we put in interim solutions such as groundwater development and also spring protections. And these areas are then part of the planning processes and priorities of municipalities.
Yeah.
So
what is the timeline that you're giving to the people of Elliot when they will begin to see the impact and the results of these interim interventions?
As I've said, Elliot, there's a bulk infrastructure project that is currently underway, and its completion is in this financial year, which has seen the upgrade of the bulk supply in the area. And it will then be reticulated further by the municipality to increase or to reach the footprint for which it is intended. So there are a mix of interventions where there's interim as well as the formal and sustainable supply that is happening. But I think I want to agree to say maybe strengthening communication so that people know where they are in the queue, because municipalities do have IDPs, integrated development plans. Within each is a chapter for water services development plans, which indicates what is going to happen in terms of the type of water solution that would be coming, whether it's the formal or it's an interim. And I want to agree that we need to strengthen communication so that at least people know whilst they're waiting when and how long they should be waiting for what type of solution.
Let's talk to the people of Carla then. People of Carla, they are saying they have no water, they've not seen water in a while, but there's water that passes right underneath them and it goes to an irrigation scheme just a couple of kilometers away, saying they've just not been prioritized when it comes to this water. They are given to farms, white people farms, and the people of Carla are left in the dry without any water.
In Carla, which is under the jurisdiction of the Krisani District Municipality, there are a number of schemes. As I've said, whilst we are putting in infrastructure, whether it's interim or it is long-term, there are other challenges that interfere with that. As I've said, we have plowed back to our homes, our communities, as we had received many opportunities in government for better work opportunities, where we would put up mansions back home, we connect ourselves, and that in itself would interfere with whatever system that has been there. And for that, it would need then an upgrade for that existing supply to be put in place. However, there are a number of schemes just around Carla that are currently being implemented by the district and its groundwater development. And part of these are affected indeed by drought. That is why we have put in some areas that cannot be, that where the pressure has been interfered with, where water is no longer reaching those areas, where we have put in tanks at strategic points, and tankering has been then at a scheduled period or a scheduled times to reach those communities, whilst the long-term supply is on its way. However, the issue of dams that are around our country that has been single-purpose dams, those dams that were maybe only for irrigation, we have seen planning around. In fact, we have ensured planning around them, transforming them to be multi-purpose dams. Your Ngocha, your Lubisi Dam, your Konka Dam, those are the dams that were originally largely used by irrigators that are currently having bulk supply projects that are for domestic supply.
But this is what the people are saying industry is sitting and wasting huge sums of water, but this water is not getting to the people. What is the challenge? What is keeping government from being able to access those particular schemes so that they can supply water to the people if that water is available to that degree?
As I said, I've mentioned a number of schemes already. I've talked about the Konka Dam that now has seen development of it to also cater for domestic supply. Queenstown is getting water from Konka Dam. There are villages along that pipeline that are now getting attention, Ilinge townships, and those, as you go towards Carla, are also being supplied from those. Secondly, as I've mentioned, Yongocha, which was largely irrigation, we're now seeing the cluster 9 villages of Krisani being supplied from Ngocha Dam. Not only that, that is also going to the areas of Ngamako. We are expanding the footprint of these originally single-purpose dams to be looking at our basic needs, which is domestic use or for human consumption. And those schemes are there and they are being implemented. I can name a number of them. Right. For instance, Mthatha Dam was largely for hydropower generation. We engaged ESCOM for domestic use, and today we have increased the supply, or at least the treatment capacity of the treatment plant to reach a 50-kilometer radius away from Mthatha, because that dam is able to supply those. So there are a number of such developments that are specifically transforming the single-purpose use dam to be multi-purpose use for the access of people. But of course, one would need to be specific as to which area you are referring to, and then we zoom into a specific person and a specific village.
All right,
but
we'll come to those specifics in a moment when we continue. The head of the Department of Sanitation and Water and Sanitation, rather, in the Eastern Cape, there, Portia Makhanya, with us when we continue next. Stay with us. Back with you tonight with the Provincial Head of Department for Water and Sanitation in the Eastern Cape. That province heading to day zero from all accounts as far as the reports are coming through. And we are, of course, talking to Portia Makhanya on some of the interventions. How far is Buffalo City municipality from day zero? I think one of the publications saying it's quite imminent. In fact, the province was due to get into day zero 1st of June 2021, according to some publications.
Thank you. Amatole, the Buffalo City is within one of our major supply systems. And I want to say, when I talk about supply systems, we're talking about a number of dams that are interlinked, where one dam is fed from another once certain levels are reached. So the Amatole system and the Algoa systems, because of the two metros, are our major systems. And Amatole system is one of our systems that is better off than your Nelson Mandela Bay municipality or the Algoa systems as we know it, due to at least the dam levels at the systems are not as dire as it. But looking at the trends from the last more than 10 years, last 10 years at least, we can see a downward trend in terms of storage levels, which calls, we have operational rules for each dam, so that when it reaches a certain level, we are monitoring the rainfall patterns and we enforce restrictions. Currently, the Buffalo City is under restrictions of 10% of its allocated use, and the irrigation is also restricted 30%.
How far are they from level 7?
From?
How far are they from level 7 of restrictions?
They still have quite a healthier system, unlike the Nelson Mandela. You see, we're now getting into our rain season, which is our October. Our rain year starts, and we are positive, looking at the forecasted rainfall as we receive it from the Water Services Bureau, that we expect those levels to increase because we are a summer rain a portion, a part of the province, and we are hoping for those summer rains to resuscitate or to increase the levels, at least on this part of the province. Our biggest worry is more on the Nelson Mandela side of the province, where
let's talk about that. Let's talk about Adelaide. In Adelaide, if you look at the Gift of the Givers report, they say literally the dam there is empty. In fact, people start lining up the night before just to fill up a bucket of water. By morning already, there are queues there that have been standing next to the water tankers overnight.
Exactly. That is one, when we looked at all the drought impacted areas, Amatole district is one of them, one of the areas that we have categorized as hotspots. And in it is Butterworth, Bedford, and Adelaide that are largely hit, which is also in Raymond Mhlaba. The groundwater sources has been our alternative supply, and also sharing supply there from the Fish River with Bedford and Adelaide. So it is not a day zero, but it would be decreased supply and access to the water that we would normally get. Just like our Nelson Mandela Metro, it is on its dams there, we actually come to a point where we can no longer abstract that we are actually getting to what we call debt storage, getting means to get to the debt storage, but also developing groundwater as an alternative supply, looking at seawater desalination, however, as well as in fact, let me just say Nelson Mandela is one of the luckiest parts as well, because it is also getting a huge supply from the Harib Dam, which is coming through river systems and canals to the metro. Currently, 70% of what the metro is getting from its current supply is coming from the Harib Dam. And currently, there's even upgrading of the treatment plant that is to supply that or to distribute that water further. And that work is being carried out together with our water board, Amatola Water Board, and the Metro, where we are seeing it to completion around end of this month and early October, where we're going to get 70 megaliters more to what we are getting currently. So the Nelson Mandela Metro has been able to use that water and distribute it to the areas that are currently having a dry or below abstraction point dam.
But why is your report, the HOD, different to that of those who are offering water relief assistance there? In fact, they're saying your predictions are misplaced. By and large, you're still relying on rainwater to come. In fact, Gift of the Givers, they're saying they need to be reviewing the state of their borehole currently and making sure that they upgrade that filtration, because that is all that people are depending on at this point.
I cannot speak for the Gift of the Givers, but my personal encounter with them, even just at Makhanda, has been, based on inaccurate reporting and communication of the real issues. We are meeting on a fortnightly basis, on a 2-weekly basis with all municipalities, and we call that gathering the war room, and where each and every municipality comes and present its own challenges, the dam levels, their interventions. So Gift of the Givers actually should be part of the war room, and they haven't been attending it for more than a year, and they do get those invites. It would assist if they would also join as a member, and they are invited so that they can get more accurate information.
Alfred Zobo municipality, the Alfred Zobo Development Initiative had promised there about 1,000 water tankers. They have delivered less than 500 tanks. Why have they failed to deliver on their promise?
I'm not aware of the promise, but I'm aware of the number of tanks that we as a department has supported them together with COCTA to reach out, especially for those areas that are in terrains that you cannot even tanker water to, and to areas that do not have access to formal infrastructure yet. And tankering is happening in those areas. That is coupled with work done under MISA and COCTA to actually bring on board more sustainable sources, that is through groundwater development. So Alfred Zobo specifically, its dams are relatively full, but they are much more hit by the backlogs that they have. They've got a huge backlog of people who do not have access, and that is what they're battling with. But in terms of their schemes, they are all operational, their dams are healthy, and COCTA and the department as well as MISA has been